They said it was just a movie deal, but behind the cameras, it was a silent war of power and pride. When Blake Lively signed on for It Ends With Us, she didn't just step into a role, she stepped into a battlefield, a world of hidden contracts, secret promises, and quiet rivalries that would shake Hollywood to its core. And when the truth finally surfaced, no one was ready for how far the game really went. Blake Lively did not just take a role, she took control when she walked onto the set of It Ends With Us. The air shifted. What looked like a romantic drama on paper was actually the beginning of a high-stakes Hollywood chess match. Because behind every smile and camera flash, there was a strategy playing out that no one saw coming. Headlines said she earned $1.75 million for 6 weeks of work, but what they never revealed was how every clause, every perk, and every signature in that contract was part of a bigger plan. Insiders whispered that this was not about money. It was about position, about leverage, about reshaping the story of who held the power on that set. Justin Baldoni had dreamed of turning Colleen Hoover's book into something raw, emotional, and human. But the moment Blake stepped in, everything changed: the energy, the direction, even the tone of the production. It became louder, glossier, and suddenly everything revolved around her. She was not just the star, she was the storm. She negotiated the perks, the jets, the bonuses, the publicity angles. She maneuvered through every detail like someone who knew exactly what she was building, because in Hollywood, power is never given. It is taken as the cameras rolled and the studio smiled. Blake was rewriting her own script in real time, while Justin, the heart of the story, found himself slowly pushed to the sidelines. Those close to the production said she was brilliant, yes, but also relentless. She had final say over wardrobe, final say over the lighting, final say over how she appeared in every frame. And once she started getting that control, it never stopped. Her influence spread through every meeting, every edit, every decision that was supposed to be artistic became personal. The movie was supposed to be about heartbreak, but behind the scenes, it was about hierarchy. And when the box office exploded, the game went from subtle to seismic, because suddenly the movie that was meant to showcase Justin's vision became the foundation of Blake's empire. It Ends With Us was not supposed to be a phenomenon, but it became a $351 million global hit. A cultural wave that turned Blake into the headline she always wanted to be. But with fame comes friction, and those who watched closely saw the cracks. Forming the smiles looked rehearsed, the interviews sounded controlled, and the chemistry between director and star became colder by the week when the cameras stopped rolling. The real drama started. Insiders described moments of tension on set meetings, where creative direction turned into confrontation, and where Justin's quiet leadership clashed with Blake's unstoppable ambition. And while the world saw a love story unfolding on screen, Hollywood saw a power struggle hidden in plain sight. That first paycheck, the perks and the red carpet appearances were only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would not end when the credits rolled. Because behind every scene, there was another story waiting to break, and when it did, it would change everything. The movie became a mirror, not just for its characters, but for the people who made it. It showed what happens when control, ambition, and ego collide in the most unforgiving industry on earth. And as the whispers turned into headlines, everyone started asking the same question: was Blake Lively the star of the movie, or the author of its downfall? The answer was about to unfold in a way no one could predict, because in Hollywood, nothing is what it seems, and every smile hides a strategy. When It Ends With Us hit theaters in August 2024, no one expected it to become a global wave, a mid-budget romance that suddenly turned into a cultural event. People lined up outside theaters, crying, laughing, posting and creating a storm of emotion across social media. It was supposed to be Justin Baldoni's directorial triumph. But as the movie's numbers climbed higher, Blake Lively saw something else. She saw leverage, because when a film crosses $100 million in box office, a narrative begins to write itself, and she knew how to control that story. She started shaping the press cycles, the headlines, the interviews, turning what was once a collaboration into a coronation. Every magazine cover, every talk show appearance subtly positioned her as the creative force behind it all. And for a moment, it worked. Hollywood loves a winner, and Blake played the role perfectly until the illusion began to crack. Those who worked on the production started talking quietly about how different things had been behind the scenes. The long meetings, the silent tension, the feeling that the director was slowly being erased from his own project. The crew described it as walking on glass because Blake's influence had become unshakable. They said she was calculated, that every move she made was designed to keep her image untouchable. Her approval was needed for promotional materials, costumes, and even social media rollouts. Justin, who had built this movie from scratch, was forced to fight for his own vision. But the battle was uneven. Fame had already picked its favorite, and for months he stayed silent, choosing patience over public confrontation. But that silence only fueled speculation. The internet began to buzz with questions about who was really behind the movie's success. Was it the director who crafted the emotional heart, or the actress who turned it into a viral spectacle? And as awards season approached, the tension reached its breaking point. Because when the nominations were announced, the dream collapsed. No Oscars, no Golden Globes, not even a nod for direction. The world had moved on, and Blake's glossy campaign suddenly felt hollow. What was supposed to be her crowning moment turned into a quiet disappointment, and behind closed doors, frustration grew when people expected celebration. They found blame, and that is when everything started to turn. What was once whispered became written. Contracts began leaking, emails surfaced, and lawyers started circling by. December of that year, the smiles had vanished. Blake's team moved first, filing a harassment lawsuit that landed like a thunderclap across the industry, timing that insiders described as perfect almost. Too perfect because it dropped just as the movie hit peak streaming numbers, while the public sympathized. Justin fought back with a $400 million defamation countersuit, arguing that her accusations were carefully constructed to destroy his name and seize the narrative once more. The court became their new stage, and the headlines became their dialogue. But when the decisions finally came down, it was not victory for either side. The court dismissed Baldoni's suit, but also raised questions about Blake's motives. The truth was blurred, the damage irreversible. The movie that once united them now divided Hollywood itself. The money was gone, the goodwill burned, and the reputation scarred. What had started as a dream collaboration had become a cautionary tale whispered across studio boardrooms and agents' offices alike. And as the dust settled, one thing became clear. Fame had turned against its favorite child, because in Hollywood, the higher the climb, the harder the fall. And Blake Lively was learning that lesson in real time. When the court files became public in October 2025, the illusion shattered. What had been a glossy Hollywood dream was now raw paperwork. Every line of Blake Lively's contract was suddenly exposed to the world, and people were stunned by what they saw. Her base pay, $1.75 million, seemed huge, but the bonuses, the perks, and the power clauses revealed a different story. It was not a paycheck. It was a kingdom written in ink. If the film tripled its budget, she got another $250,000 if she was nominated for an Oscar. She got another $100,000 if she won it doubled. There were bonuses for Golden Globes, private jets for her family, personal assistants, wardrobe control, even a weekly stipend. For training, it looked less like a movie contract and more like a declaration of status. And behind it all were quiet demands for creative approval that stretched far beyond her job as an actor. Insiders said she had final say on publicity angles, on which photos were used for the campaign, even on which shots appeared in the trailer. One crew member described it as working under invisible management, because every decision eventually led back to her. And when Justin Baldoni tried to push back to protect his vision, that was when the quiet tension turned into silent war. What had started as mutual respect became a constant struggle for control. Those who were there said meetings would end in silence, emails would go unanswered, and what was once collaboration began to feel like competition. Blake had become the executive producer, no one hired, and Justin the director, no one recognized. By the time the movie hit $300 million at the box office, their partnership was already broken. The public never saw it, but on the inside, it was chaos. And when the lawsuits began, it only confirmed what insiders had feared. This was no longer about art, it was about ownership. Because when you promise a star the world, they start expecting it. But when the world does not deliver, the crash is inevitable. And crash it did. The legal battles drained millions. And even though Blake won the headlines, she lost the narrative, because the court of public opinion does not forget when. The lawyers stopped talking, the accountants started calculating, and the numbers told a harsh story. Her total take from It Ends With Us was around $2 million, counting perks and bonuses, but almost half gone to taxes, another chunk to agents. Lawyers, managers, and stylist insiders say that after the cuts and cleanup, she might have kept less than $800,000 from what was once the deal of a lifetime. But the money was not the real loss, it was the momentum. Brand deals paused. Campaigns stalled, scripts quietly disappeared because when a name becomes synonymous with controversy, the industry hesitates. Even the luxury labels that once adored her began backing away quietly. One fashion insider admitted she had become unpredictable. And that word is poison in a town built on image. The actress who built a career on charm was now being called difficult. And in Hollywood, difficult does not get you calls. It gets you replaced. Meanwhile, Justin's calm silence began to pay off. He focused on his next projects, spoke rarely, and stayed out of the chaos that strategy earned him. Quiet allies in the same industry that once doubted him, while Blake's empire began to shrink. His reputation began to rebuild. Because sometimes, power is not in the noise, it is in restraint. The storm she created to control the narrative ended up consuming her own story. And when the dust cleared, the woman who had once been the face of effortless glamour was left fighting to prove she still belonged in the end. Blake Lively's story became more than a scandal. It became a study in how fast power shifts in Hollywood. What began as a dream role turned into a mirror reflecting the danger of chasing control in a world built on illusion. She walked into It Ends With Us as a star, and walked out as a symbol of how fragile fame can be. When ego and ambition collide, her $1 million contract looked like victory, but the aftermath revealed the real cost. She gained the spotlight, but lost the trust of an industry that values stability over spectacle, and once that trust cracks, it rarely heals. She tried to turn the narrative into empowerment, but the audience had already seen. Behind the curtain, they saw the pattern, the calculated charm, the careful spin, and what once looked like confidence now read as control. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni stood as her opposite, proof that sometimes silence is the loudest answer. He never needed to win the argument, because time did it for him. While her reputation was debated, his integrity was recognized quietly, and that difference changed everything. Blake's fall was not about money or fame. It was about perception. And perception is the heartbeat of Hollywood. She wanted to own her story. But the story owned her instead. Because no matter how strong your image or how powerful your platform, once the public decides your reflection has cracks, the illusion fades away. Her $1 million deal should have been the peak of her career, but it became the price of her power. And in the end, the lesson was simple. Fame is not forever. Respect is. And once you trade one for the other, there is no contract big enough to buy it back.